In this video, I'm going to show you how you can press one key and instantly be inside a VS Code development environment from a GitHub repository. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Jeremy, and this channel is all about helping you to become a better developer with the latest tools and techniques. All right, let's get started. Okay, so I currently have a GitHub repository open, and the trick here is just press one key. I'm just going to press the period key, and we can see that the browser instantly switches over to an in-browser VS Code instance. We can see all the source files for that repository, and we can edit the files. So you may be asking, what exactly is this VS Code in a browser instance? This VS Code instance is running in what's called a virtual workspace mode. And with that comes a few limitations. For one, certain key bindings won't work. This is because the browser is going to catch some of the key pressings when you press the keys instead of VS Code. Also, if we try to open up the terminal in VS Code, we can see that doesn't work either. And this is because the code is not actually in an environment that can actually be executed. You're not really like in a Docker container or on your local computer. This is just running in the browser. There's no terminal to execute commands. Also, if you come over to debugging, you can see that you can't really debug either. This is the same reason as not having a terminal. You can't execute this code. Along with not being able to run the code in the browser, some of your extensions may not work in this environment. This is because some of the extensions are not able to run in a virtual workspace. So for example, if I come over to extensions and search for dev containers, I can see this little yellow triangle that says dev containers extension is not available for VS Code for the web. And this is because this particular extension is used to manage Docker containers, and we don't really have those in the browser. So if you can't execute the code, what is this good for? This trick is good for just making quick changes when you're on the go, or maybe you're not on the go and you just want to make quick changes in the browser without cloning the code or pulling it down or anything like that. You can also use this trick to browse repositories with more features than what's built into GitHub. So for example, we can see that we have syntax highlighting. We also have the VS Code search built in, and so we can search for functions and commands and things like that. There's also go to definition that works just like it does in VS Code. So if I hold the command key and click, it'll take me to that definition. Another big advantage is if you wanted to look at multiple files at the same time. You can't really do this in GitHub without opening multiple browser tabs. So here you can see that I'm able to switch back and forth between multiple files, and also I can do a split screen. We can also use this GitHub trick for working on a mobile device while we're on the go. So for example, here's what it looks like on an iPad. So what if you've opened up VS Code in the browser using this trick and you really need more features than what is built into this instance? Well, you have a couple of options. Let's check those out. So if we come down to the bottom left corner, we can see where it says GitHub. If we click on that, so the first option is to continue working in a new code space. This opens up GitHub code spaces that allows you to run the code. If you're new to code spaces, check out this other video where I cover code spaces in depth. Let's go ahead and click on that and see how that works. Here we can select how many cores and RAM we need. I'm just going to choose the lowest option. And now we're in a full-fledged development environment with a terminal and debug right in the browser using GitHub code spaces. I can see a scenario where you're on the go and only have an iPad, and you're able to make changes using VS Code in the browser and then switch over to code spaces and execute that code and make sure it works. Now back at github.dev, we're going to come back and click on GitHub in the bottom left corner. And our second option is to continue working in a remote repository in VS Code Desktop. Let's try that out. Here we can see it's asking for us to open VS Code. And I should note that you need VS Code installed on your computer in order for this to work. So I'm just going to click Open VS Code. And here I get a pop-up that's asking us to install the Remote Repositories extension. So I'm just going to click on Install and Open. I'm going to click on Install again. And now we can see that this repository has opened up in our local VS Code instance in restricted mode using a virtual workspace. If you're not sure what a virtual workspace is, I have another video covering that, and you can check that out right here. But essentially the code is not being hosted on our local computer, and we're going to have the same limitations as we did in VS Code in the browser. So let's check out our third option for continuing to work on the code. So I'm back at github.dev, and I'm going to click on GitHub again. And the third option is to continue working in a new local clone. We'll click on that. It's asking us to open Visual Studio Code again. And then here it's asking us where we want to save the repository. I'm just going to save it here and choose Select as Repository Destination. And then we'll click on Open to open the repository. And now we've cloned the repository and can can work on it just like any other project on our local computer. We can see that here's our terminal, and we can run the code and debug it. If you're using this trick and you want to run the code without any limitations, you should clone the repo or run in GitHub code spaces. Now let's talk about other ways you can use this trick. So I'm back on github.com and I have my repository open. Instead of pressing the period key, I can come up here and change the URL from github.com to github.dev and leave everything after that the same and press enter, and it opens up VS Code in a browser just like it did with the period key. The other way to use this trick is to view pull requests. So I'm back on github.com. I'm going to come over and click on pull request and open up this pull request. So the normal workflow here is to come over to files changed and then see which files have changed. But instead I can hit the period key to open up VS Code in the browser, and I can see the changes right there using VS Code in the browser. And that's all for this week's video. If you found this GitHub trick helpful, check out this other video where I show you a complete GitHub workflow without ever leaving VS Code. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.